I had a visit with Bruce and Yvonne Lambert. And usually when you visit Bruce and Yvonne, my experience is that Yvonne doesn't say much, but Bruce will always begin a theological discussion with me. Now, he worships with the Catholics on Sunday. And the question that Bruce asked me was, do you use the lectionary? I said, yes, we use the lectionary. Then he said to me, after the service, the deacons began to talk about the scripture, the second coming of Jesus. I said, Bruce, I have to confess, last Sunday, I really didn't do a good job in that sermon. In fact, when I reached home, I called David and said, please, David, don't put it on YouTube, because I thought it was not a really good service, because I was not in a good place. Then Bruce said to me, what do you think about the second coming? I said, Bruce, I don't think anything. Jesus has been coming for the last 2,000 years. I don't know what to say to you, but what I know is that when that time comes, there will be earthquakes, seas will roar. And what I remember saying to the church, I'm telling Bruce, is that scripture said we need to stand up and lift our heads. This is what scripture said. When these things happen, then you need to stand up and you need to lift your head, because great things are going to happen. I went home. I thought about Bruce's word. I thought, oh my, I didn't do a good job to Strathroy United Church. I didn't give a good message. What's wrong with you? What's wrong with you, Abiel? When God has given you so much so that you can share, what's wrong with you? Then I started preparing for this week's service, and then we meet another character there, Zachariah. He's an old priest in his 80s. He's married to Elizabeth. They have no children. And scripture says because Elizabeth was barren. Now, during those times, when you married, it was an expectation that you have to have children. If you do not have children, then you are despised. You are criticized. People talk behind your back. This is what Elizabeth was experiencing. Now, this old priest is working in the temple, and he was burning incense. Something happens. An angel comes to him and says to him, you're going to be blessed with a son. I'm 80 years old. My wife is up there, 80 years old. How can that be? How can that be? It can't. And the angel says to him, because you do not believe, I am going to shut your mouth. You'll not say a word until that time comes. Friends, this is how God works in our lives. God comes to us. God reveals himself to us. And God does the impossible. And when God does the impossible, we as people of faith, then we have to have hope. So there is hope. Friends, there is hope. When you think that things are not going to work and God visits you, then things work. In Zechariah's time, there were big problems. Herod the king was growing old and sickly and weak. They were facing taxes. The Romans were increasing taxes. Life was not good. People who were poor. People were not happy. You know, friends, when I hear stories about my country, South Africa, and I hear that 35% of the people are not working, and this is why I went to my bank and every month I sent money to my family, because my family can't afford. They can't buy food. We have to look after Caroline's sister who's not working. So I always go to the bank and every month send some money so that they can buy bread. So during Jesus' time, there were no banks. There were no family members sending money. People were poor, hungry, hopeless, helpless. And God in his mercy says to Zechariah, you'll have a son, and this son is going to prepare the way. This son is going to tell the people about the light, the great light that is coming. Then I remembered Bruce's words to me, do you believe in the second coming? And I thought to myself, yes, I believe that God comes to us in different ways. I have not seen an angel, but God comes to us in different ways. And I've experienced in this church that God comes to you with people, through people who touch you, who love you, who care for you. So Strathroy United Church, this second day of Advent, there is hope. Things are going to work out. In the same chapter, then something happens again. You know this Gabriel guy, Really, I don't understand him. Then he goes to Judea. Then he finds a young lady there, Mary, and says to Mary, look, you're going to be pregnant. Mary says, oh, wait a minute. Ay, 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 ay. What are you talking about? He says, you're going to be pregnant. How can that be? I'm not married. You know, this is Mary. I'm not married. How can that be? It was a shame to be pregnant without marriage. In fact, during those times, people could stone you to death because you've broken the laws. The child you're going to bear, the child you're going to carry, is going to bring salvation. Friends, let us have hope. I believe in hope. I believe that things work for good for those people who believe in God. There's hope for us as Strathroy United Church. Oh, jeez. The things that we have done as a church, as a congregation, and all the time I turn on Front Street and Maria Street and look at the sign. I thank God for the things that we have done in this church. We don't have to look at the bad things that have happened. We need to look at the good things that are happening. This is what the angel was telling Zechariah. Look at the good things that will happen to Israel. After 9 months, the boy is born and he's called John. And people, the neighbors and the villagers are surprised. Why call him John? That's not the name. You should call him Zechariah. But the angel said, you'll call him John. Because he's going to be a great prophet. He's going to open the gates. And he's going to allow people to be free. So Strathroy United Church, God is using John to show us that Jesus is coming and that Jesus is the light. Jesus is the light, and he lights up darkness. I read a little story about Edward of Windsor, Prince of Wales. He was traveling to India. And one of the things, as he was traveling to India, he had to meet people who were outcasts, people who were treated very bad, people who were treated like slaves. And 25,000 of those were waiting for the prince. And usually, the prince doesn't stop. The car passes, and the people wave. But this day was different. The prince stopped, listened to the spokesperson, stepped out of the car, talked to the people a little bit, looked them over, stood back, and gave them a salute. And the people who were hopeless and feeling helpless said these words, "Behold the light. Behold, the light has come." They had hope. Let me talk a little bit about Anne Frank's diary. For those who have not read it, I suggest you go read it. It was during the Second World War, and all Jews had stayed in attics of homes, afraid of the Germans, afraid of being arrested and taken to Auschwitz. For 2 years, they lived in the attic. And one day, something happened. They heard the knock at the door, and the doors were kicked. And the SS came with hammers and banged the attic. Now, Anne Frank writes in her diary, and she says, "My father said to us, for 2 years, we have been living in fear, afraid. But now, we're living in hope." Isn't it amazing that in trying times, we can have hope? So Strathroy United Church, this second day of Advent, there is hope for us as a church, as a congregation, as me and my family, and you and your family. Zachariah opened his mouth when the child was born and said these wonderful words that I want to read for you. Blessings to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has turned his face towards his people and has set them free. God has turned his face towards us, and God has set us free. There is hope. In life, in death, in life beyond death, we're not alone. Thanks be to God.